Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Sorry about the delay. My name is Carrie Peterson. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer with Bramasol. I also have Julio Dalla Costa with me from Bramasol, Director of Technical Accounting. And we want to welcome Tom Anderson, our guest presenter, who is in charge of SAP Global Solution of SAP Real Estate. This webinar is going to cover briefly a new ASC 842 update that I think you'll all be interested in. And then we're going to go into cloud for real estate, really the future of asset management. Quick agenda, overview of the agenda, and then I've got a little housekeeping to do, but we're going to again do the ASC 842 update, go into the comply, optimize, transform, how complying with the update, and then really how you can optimize and transform with the SAP Cloud for real estate, and then we're going to do a wrap up. So for housekeeping, please, we want this to be interactive. So on the bottom right-hand side, I believe you can see my screen now. Sorry about that.
I can.
Okay, thank you, Julio. The bottom right-hand side, you see the area for questions. We'll be tracking questions. If we don't have time to get to them because of the late start, then we will definitely follow up. And as well as, please go to bramasol.com and download our previous webinars. And then you can always contact us at bramasol.com, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick this over to Julio and talk about the ASC 842 update.
Well, thank you, Carrie, very much. I appreciate everyone being here today. Thank you, Mr. Tom Anderson, for being on this webinar. So I wanted to start off this webinar by giving the audience an update. What's going on in the world of ASC 842 and lease accounting? So as we know, public companies have already complied because they have already given 2 quarters worth of leasing information. So public companies complied by December 15, 2018. So we have been seeing and reviewing Q1 and Q2 10Q reports that has the new lease accounting footnote under ASC 842. We know as of now that private companies had 1 year of delay, which meant that as it stands today, ASC 42 for private companies would be effective on January 1st, 2020. But let's give it a moment because there has been a lot of controversy in the accounting world. I know, yes, accountants have some controversy whereby constituents have been talking to the AICPA, which is the governing body for CPAs, and been asking the AICPA to go and ask the FASB on their behalf to delay. So very unusual, in May 2019, the AICPA wrote a letter to the FASB asking them if they could consider delaying the effective date of ASC 842 by 1 year. The reasons given really has been private companies have been struggling. There was a recent PwC survey that said that only as of now, July, only about 31 private companies have actually started their projects. And we've spoken many times before on the depth and granularity that these projects have taken on. And many companies have actually underestimated the effort to actually implement the new standard. Some of the reasons the AICPA cited to the FASB was a lot of companies are still have what we call ASC 606 revenue recognition overhang. So some companies are still dealing with 606 rev rec issues, and having it back to back was just too much. Also, too, public companies are deemed to be the leading filers. What does that mean? That means that usually public companies have the sophistication, the level of resources that are necessary, And it's typical that private companies have followed suit. So just like what I have been doing and everybody else, is that you look at the very large public companies, you look at their disclosures, their filing reports, and then you sort of piggyback off of them. So private companies went to the AICPA and basically said that, hey, we haven't got enough data points from public companies to get a good lead into this. The next thing AICPA cited was really internal controls. As we know, there's ASC 250, which says that whenever you have a change in accounting or change in accounting principles, not only do you have to change the accounting, but don't forget about Sarbanes-Oxley internal control environment, that there has to be proper internal control and system effectiveness and efficiencies testing to make sure that companies have been adopting the new standard correctly. Also, too, the companies have basically said that, as we know, leasing, even so, lease debt is not debt, it's actually a liability. So there are a lot of companies out there with a lot of debt covenants that some companies have to rewrite their loan agreements to exclude. What we're seeing in the marketplace today is that some companies have been rewriting their loan agreements to exclude lease liability because it's not debt as per the FASB. So there is still some doings that need to be done with banks, rating agencies, and stuff like that. Also, lastly, we have found that because this is a niche accounting and the number of companies are basically doing the same thing in each company environment, there aren't that many resources who understand what is the new standard say, how is it different from ASC 840. So companies are struggling to hire qualified, intelligent resources to handle the changes. From that, so what happened with that? FASB basically said that if this is effective, it will be a new standard. The new standard will be effective January 1st, 2021. So just as an update, on July 17th, which was basically 12 days ago, the FASB unanimously approved a proposal to defer the effective date for private companies for 1 year. What does that mean? That means that the board has approved it, they've put it out for comment, and usually when this is done, it will be ratified in the next meeting, which is scheduled for Q4. So I think many private companies, from what we are talking to our customers, have been saying that some companies are happy, some companies have already started their projects. So we wanted to give some companies a little bit of advice on what you can do now. Next slide.
Great, thanks, Julio. So, companies, I guess I'll just transition, I'll just keep it over with you. So, what is your opinion on what companies should be doing now with this new update?
Yeah, good question, Carrie. So it depends, right? So some companies, according to PwC, only 31% of private companies actually started their lease accounting projects. So for the ones that have already started, we strongly recommend they continue the process of capturing the data points. So we know for 842, we need, commencement date, lease terms, renewal options, the payments, the CPI increases. And we also recommend, which is the most difficult piece of the implementation from the technical accounting side, is the search for embedded leases. What does that mean? That means that companies have their known leases already from 840. However, because of the new guidance, what companies don't have is there might be embedded leases within service contracts. So things like utilities, things like IT infrastructure contracts. And lastly, as companies continue to go down the lease accounting project route, you always want to get an estimate of I have 5,000 leases. What does that mean for me and my company? So what is my capitalization of my right of use asset? What is my lease liability going to look like? That way, you can start reviewing and looking at your loan covenants within your loan agreements to see and reach out to lenders and ask them, will there be any changes in definitions? Do we have to do change in agreements? And if so, we should start that process sooner rather than later. Carrie?
Very good. So I guess that's talking about extending, the deadline for private companies, but let's spend a few minutes just talk about the lessons learned thus far, okay?
Yes, of course. So we have spoken at length on this number of times over the last 18 months, but just as a quick reminder, very high level summary, we just talked about embedded leases. Not every lease is labeled as a lease. So as you begin your project, start looking at those service contracts. A big service contract area would be IT service contracts. So when you have IT data providing your data centers, the big thing about right of use assets is really, do you have right of use assets? Okay, can you just go back one slide?
Sorry.
Right. And then secondly, where are all these leases? What we found is, especially in multinational environments, leases are all over the company. They are in somebody's drawer, they're in somebody's hard drive. And what we always advise our customers early on is find a proper methodology to store all these leases. So we call it a data staging area, whether that be in a server or wherever. You want to define a proper methodology to capture all these leases. And you want to send out questionnaires to every business unit subsidiary to make sure that they are aware of what the project is going, and everybody understands that the leases in somebody's desk or somebody's drawer, we have to capture all of them, because one of the main issues that the auditors are going to ask is the completeness of the data set. Another point is, these leases require considerable judgment. What does that mean? That means that if I have a 5-year lease, but I have 2 renewal periods of 5 years and 5 years, potentially I may have a 15-year lease. So even though my lease on paper says I have a 5-year lease, ASC 842 requires technical accounting judgment to say, this is a 15-year lease, a 5-year lease, a 12-year lease. You also have to start looking at, what are the payment amounts? Are we going to include lease and non-lease into the payment structure? Are we going to exclude non-lease components? How are we dealing with CAM? Very important. So this takes a little time, and usually we like to always see that the technical accounting project starts out first, and then once that is done, those results are handed over to the IT implementation team with conclusions. Also, you can expect that data sources come from different places. Beyond the desk drawers and the actual leases, usually you have to talk to legal. You have to talk to your treasury department, who is determining what is the incremental borrowing rate for that company. And then you have to push it down to your subsidiaries. What about fair market valuations? Who are doing those analyses? That usually come from a separate area than lease accounting. Next slide. Don't forget about controls. Sarbanes-Oxley for public companies, private companies still have to assess the internal control environment. And as we look to lease accounting and ASC 842, we always say, are we going to have a centralized environment? Are we going to have a decentralized? We have seen a number of companies actually change their structure. In many cases, we have seen lease accounting being done on a decentralized level. And as a result of 842, because, some companies want to have that control, they want to have that decision-making process at corporate, we've actually seen conversions from decentralized to centralized. Each structure comes with its own risk and reward, so something to be taken very seriously as we go into that. Second to last year, incremental borrowing rates. The rates are complex. You have to do your IBR based on your asset class, So your IBR should be different from your building versus a photocopy machine. Your term, if you have a 30-year lease versus a 2-year lease, FASB expects you to take those lease terms into consideration. And lastly, your economic environment is very important. So if you have leases in Argentina or Brazil, or maybe even Venezuela, where there's hyperinflation, you can't use the same incremental borrowing rate as you would use in North America, US and Canada, Australia, UK. So all these things have to be taken into consideration and documented. Lastly, as we've seen, other departments will likely get involved. So not just an accounting project. This is a very holistic accounting, procurement, tax, treasury, IT, real estate. So it's not just an accounting project. This is an enterprise-wide project. And the sooner you have cross-functional teams involved in ASC 842 transition project, the more successful your project will be. Carrie, I'll turn it back over to you now.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm excited for Tom Anderson to show you the SAP Cloud for Real Estate solution. But before we do that, I want to talk about why I'm excited about it. What we've been talking about so far with Julio is really the comply piece. Once you've done all that work, you've gathered all that data, that's really when you can transition into the optimize and transform. So let's just review what we mean by that before we go into the demo. And please, Julio and Tom, please chime in here, and let's just have a conversation. So again, with the comply, you're meeting those standards, and whether it is whether you're using SAP CLM solution, which you've seen in prior webinars, other solutions, or again, the #1 software in the world is Excel, so that might be the case. So meeting those comply, whether you're private or public, you've done that. And now what you really want to do is you've taken that effort, and it's time to get some benefit from that effort, and now optimize your processes, and then really again transform not only the processes but the business itself. So leveraging technology to get more ROI out of your efforts. So let's just go into a little bit more. Again, I'll just cover with the comply. A lot of it's going to be repeat of what we've covered already, and then get into again the optimization and transformation.
Yes. So Carrie, if I could just jump in for a second here. So really, comply it's what you do to get past that hurdle line. So we've seen it with many of our customers where they have come and they have created a giant spreadsheet with present value formulas and say, I have 500 leases. I'll have the accounting team work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week just to comply. Is that the right solution? Short term, yes, because public companies in Q1, they had to disclose that they complied with the standard, and they had to disclose, here's my right of use asset for my 500 leases. Here's my lease liability. Here's the IBR I use. So it's basically doing whatever you need to do to comply, which is the most basic of our comply, optimize, transform. Now, Carrie and Tom is going to take us into the both of the situation, which is really how do you optimize from that comply? So Carrie, you want to take it away on the optimize side?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to kind of transition over to Tom. So I know they're going to be seeing the solution in just a few minutes here, but maybe you can just talk about how SAP Cloud for Real Estate is allowing them to optimize now.
Thanks, Carrie. So the Cloud for Real Estate solution is designed to support corporate real estate processes, which is really around what do we hold in our portfolio and how effectively are we using the space within that portfolio. So as we go through the demo, you'll see that it's about identifying what do I have and how effectively am I using it, and be able to visually understand the attributes of the real estate portfolio. And the way this helps you optimize is you can quickly see and understand how effectively are you assigning spaces and what teams are using those spaces. So instead, again, of trying to manage, your space utilization of a building, for example, using Excel, you have a purpose-built solution that allows you to assign teams and individuals to space and then be able to understand where my vacant space is and how I could maybe reprioritize space or reassign or readjust to use that space more efficiently. So really, it's about trying to understand what's in your portfolio and being able to optimize and drive the processes around space utilization.
Great, thank you. And then, we have our comply, optimize, and then the next steps, transform.
Yeah, and with transform, it's now, okay, everybody, has some way of understanding, what desks do they have in their portfolio and if they're being used. It may not be very efficient, it may not be terribly accurate the day after you perform the function, but you could always walk around a floor of a building and with the highlighter, highlight the desks that are occupied or vacant, right? And write in the names of each person who sits there. But that's not really what transformation's about. Transformation's about trying to really take it to the next level, if you will. And in this context, we have customers doing some very interesting things, such as assigning sensors to public areas, work areas, to see how effectively those spaces are being utilized. You create a team room in an open concept space. Do your team members like it? Is it being used very effectively? I have a conference room, it's built for 12 people, and I have 2 people sit in it 90% of the time. Is that an effective use of that space? No. By using technology and things like sensors, you can now say, oh, well, let's divide that into 2 conference rooms or 3 conference rooms. And now I can use that space more effectively, and it actually raises the productivity of your teams by being able to understand the space utilization and how that space is being used in real time. So it really is about not just complying or understanding what's in your space, but that transformation layer is really about how can I completely change the way I'm doing things today to improve the results. We have an interesting case study in which we have incorporated Qualtrics into some space utilization scenarios and having surveys and understanding what individuals and teams like about space. And it's done some interesting things for us, because now we can look at that and say, hey, Monday through Friday, the sales guys aren't in the office, but on Fridays they are, and they're a loud, ruckus group. So it makes working in the office very difficult on Fridays. So if you put in a wall or something to separate the sales teams from the rest of the organization, our productivity isn't impacted as deeply. And those are changes that we've been able to incorporate by bringing together, again, another level of transformation, such as using a survey tool such as Qualtrics to help with that.
Very good, thank you. So I think with this, we are going to transition to you. I know you're going to cover a few slides, and then I will go ahead and make you a presenter, and you can go into SAP Cloud for Real Estate.
All right, quick, sure. So we'll quickly cover these. So the first module that we'll talk about is location management. And location management is all about understanding what's in our portfolio and what are the attributes of that portfolio. We like to use the term a digital twin, right? So it's a digital representation of the building with its space and its attributes, and it kind of sets the platform or the basis for being able to improve the utilization of the building. It's connected with SAP S/4HANA, so your financial information can come across as far as budget and plan, as well as actuals in real time. I'm not importing data and exporting data. It's just connected in real time via APIs. So location management is the basis. It's the digital twin of my portfolio. The next slide. Contract and lease management is about managing our contracts and our legal agreements. So interestingly enough, here we leverage power of S4 as far as postings are concerned. The contract continues to stay in S4 or later versions of ECC, but we're able to connect and display that information within our Cloud for Real Estate solution using a beautiful new Fiori app to display the most important information around that lease. But the important thing to recognize is that this is the exact same functionality that you have if you're using contract and lease management today within your on-premise or private cloud, public cloud solution. It's just being displayed within our Cloud for Real Estate application.
So I know, and again, CLM, not only for, we're talking real estate here, but for movable, movable assets as well. So it applies to those as along with real estate, correct?
Sure, you can certainly manage your equipment leases within contract and lease management. And any lease that you have, you can certainly assign to a location, and you can drill straight back into it and view the terms and conditions of that lease.
Great.
And then the last one is workspace management, which is about assigning individuals and teams to space. So able to connect your employee data and your contractor information, and then assign those teams and individuals to the space and understand the utilization of that space. So, Carrie, if you'll make me presenter, hopefully everything's still ready to rock and roll.
Sure. I don't know, while I'm doing that, did you want to talk about the analytics?
Oh yeah, sorry, always forget about that one. So, interestingly enough on the analytics is that for the first time, because this is a public cloud application, we're able to deliver the analytics for you, right? In the past, we've always said, here's a framework, here's some standard extractors, here's some reports that you can use to leverage. And with this, the analytics are delivered in the cloud, and you can immediately start to leverage what's there. Of course, you can always extend it and add to it, but it gives you a great platform and way to go forward to understand your key performance indicators around your portfolio.
Great, thank you, Tom.
Okay. Are you able to see a Cloud for Real Estate screen?
Absolutely.
All right. So there's multiple components of Cloud for Real Estate. As I said, the first is the location management, contract management. The team management allows you to define your different teams that may be assigned to workspaces and import or connect your employee data. Workspace management is the assignment of individuals and teams to spaces. The advanced analytics is the connection to Analytics Cloud, and then admin settings for setting up the solution. So if I click on location management, we see here, first of all, that the screen is we see all the locations here that are available in our portfolio geographically. And one of the driving forces and factors in this solution was that we wanted to drive everything visually. I don't know how to get rid of this thing. Let's see.
Yeah, and Tom, we're not seeing anything other than the map on yours. Correct. Mm-hmm.
You're not seeing a map?
Oh, we're seeing the map, but we're not seeing.
But you're not seeing the boxes.
Right, correct.
Got it. Let me move this thing out of my way then. All right, so everything is driven visually, and I can see my regions, my sub-regions, countries, so I can drill straight into a specific country if I want along the left-hand side, or I can drill into a country based on the map. I can also filter based on the types of facilities that I have, the ownership, whether it's leased or whether it's owned, if it's in use or development, waiting development, etc. How do I get rid of this thing, Carrie? Let's see. Also, Everything is date delimited, so as you make changes and add buildings, it's recorded by a date, and the KPIs are available here on the side. So I have KPIs related to area, or KPIs related to workspaces, age of the portfolio. And anytime I see this little icon, I can click on that and jump directly into Analytics Cloud and analyze more deeply that aspect of the portfolio. So I'm going to drill into Europe here, and we see the numbers represent the number of sites or locations within that country. So I click into Germany, and we now see the number of buildings that are located at each site. So I'm going to go to our development center, which is in Potsdam. And now we see the different buildings and where they're located on a map related to the Potsdam area, and I'll drill into the Potsdam 04 office. So here we see an image of the building itself, and you have these different tabs that you can click on to go straight to that area, or of course you can drill through and scroll into it. So our basic information about the address, the office type, the use of the building, whether it's leased or owned, and as well as the type of space that is available within that building. So this building has 5,000 square meters, 2,700 of those are workspaces. We have circulation areas, vertical penetrations, amenities, other types of space within that building. And by scrolling down, I see by the floor where that space is located. Now I can drill straight into a floor from this point and see more information, or I can, of course, drill on the floor from this side. Scrolling down further, we see that this building has a capacity of 167 spaces. 166 is our current target, of which we have 112 that are utilized and 55 that are vacant within this building. And again, we see by floor where those vacant spaces are, as well as the type of space that it is. If I want to know who is sitting where, I can click on that icon, and it now shows me all the different teams that are assigned to that building and the different floors that they're occupying with the type of space that they have. Because we're connected with SAP Finance, we can assign our cost center or cost objects to this building, be able to look at the planned and actual costs associated with it, as well as the leases. So if we just quickly go into the lease, we'll click on the Potsdam lease. And as I said, this is the same lease that sits in contract and lease management within your on-premise or your cloud environment. And I'm able to display it here using this Fiori transaction. So we are able to see quickly the start date of the contract, its end, where it is on a timeline, or if I want to see all the renewal options, where they're at, my termination options are displayed here for me, as well as my reminders, and manage those reminders at the top. Our partner information is displayed here, the object information associated with the lease, my payment conditions, as well as being able to display the cash flows associated with the agreement. The point of this Fiori transaction is to kind of simplify the terms and the conditions of the lease. So not everything is available everywhere, and it's more designed for maybe a facility manager to be able to see and understand the terms and conditions of the lease, opposed to a lease administrator who has much greater needs and details associated with the lease itself. I can store my documents, my valuation within the for the lease is also assigned here. Going back to my building, we also are able to assign all the equipment. Remember, a building is a complex structure that has different types of equipment assigned to it, as well as different assets. and you can assign those pieces of equipment and those assets directly to the building, and of course drill straight into them from this screen. Because you have documents associated with that building, such as your building restrictions, your covenants, maybe floor plans, etc., they can all be assigned to this building, as well as the ability to create custom fields that you might need. One of the key things about Cloud for Real Estate is that we really wanted to design this solution in the way that it connects with other cloud applications, whether they're SAP's cloud applications or somebody else's. So a user has a way to seamlessly connect and to drive into information without worrying about, a login here or login there, jumping back and forth. So this is an example of a partner solution that sits in a cloud. It's a cloud solution. It's embedded within a Cloud for Real Estate, and I'm able to navigate and drive through here as if this was SAP's application itself and perform the different tasks and functions. In this case, navigating the building and understanding the features of the building. But as a user, I have no idea whether I'm within SAP or not. I can just use the application without a complicated log-on process. We also have another example is being able to connect to our asset intelligence network. So we have all the different major systems and components of this building, and we can see where the risks are, and the highest risk that we see here is with our transport systems. So I'll open that up, and I see the issues with the lifts. I'll open the lifts, and we see the problems with the cone elevator, and then that will just allow me to drill straight into the asset intelligence network and view the cone elevator, what's happening with the service requests, maybe there's updates that are recommended by the manufacturer, etc. Give it a second. It's a real-time demo. So,
Hey, Tom, while that's building, we did have a question on the geographic map, so maybe we can just address that real quick.
sure.
So on the geographical map for location management, does it require a different software tool? Is this to be integrated to SAP Cloud CLM?
So the maps actually is not a separate, it's part of location management, the embedded maps and all the ability to assign buildings to locations. That's all part of the core solution itself. It's not like a services add-on or separate implementation that you have to do, right? When you assign a building, you'll assign its lat long to that building, and then the system will automatically assign it to the location on the map.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we see here the elevator and able to drill into it, right? Look at its parts and structure and visualize the parts and all that fun stuff associated with it. Again, the key being here is that I seamlessly went from one application to another, and you can drill straight back into Cloud for Real Estate to better understand what's happening. Now, as we were talking about optimize and transform, one of the things that we were discussing was the ability to look at utilization of space and the assignment of space. And if we look at the first floor, for example, we have some open spaces there, and I'll go and drill into it. So now I'm on the third floor, and we see that there's a target of 8 available spaces in all the different rooms there, and here are the spaces that are the rooms that have space. This is really bothering me. I can look at the floor plan here, or I can go to jump straight to workspace management, and this allows me to see the floor plate that's been polylined for us and the different teams assigned to the space. And with the legend, I can see what spaces are dedicated and occupied, or dedicated, meaning assigned to a team but are free, what are shared desks, occupied shared desks, hot desks. So quickly understanding all the different spaces. So for example, if I select this one right here, we see that it's assigned to the IT department, but an individual is not assigned. And I can assign someone and go Anderson. Oops. And we'll assign her. It'll be as effective as of August 1st, and we assign that desk. So now that space is occupied, and as of August 1st, we'll see that it's been assigned, and that Lillian Anderson is now within that, assigned to that space. We have a couple very interesting items that will be released in September. One is using machine learning to polyline each of these spaces for you to create the rooms. So essentially, you'll be able to take a PDF of a floor. The solution will read that PDF, propose where each of the rooms are. If you agree with that, it'll automatically create all the rooms for you within Cloud for Real Estate Location Management, and then you'll be able to assign the teams and individuals to space. The second interesting thing that we intend to deliver is we call it the workspace utilization, which is the simple assignment of sensors to conference rooms or desks. So regardless of who your sensor provider is, we can tie into that, capture the sensor information, and be able to use it in analytics and reporting. Which brings me to the last piece that I want to show here is with advanced analytics. And as I said, these are analytics that are delivered out of the box because it's, again, a public cloud solution. And we're able to see quickly our portfolio overview of what do we have in the portfolio. And I'll select Europe here, for example. Let's go. So we'll see the number of sites that are on the within Europe, the buildings, the area per workspace. The green number that you see, or it could be a red number, is the change that has occurred from the previous month. So our number of leased buildings, owned buildings, office type, building type, occupancy totals, area details, such as area of ownership, what's leased and owned, by type, by component. All this information is being displayed for you in a beautiful format, right? That again, it's coming out of the box for you. If we look at the occupancy, you can see our occupancy improvements. We've improved at 33% from the previous month, right? We see the number of dedicated workspaces, available spaces that have been added, occupied spaces that are improved, etc.
Tom, can I, we do have a question that's talking about occupancy and the sensor. So if you have a second. So
now it's time.
That's great. So what information will the sensor gather? So is it the chair that's occupied? Is a PC active? Is a phone in use and such? So kind of maybe define the sensors and then what occupancy can mean.
So customers have lots of different options when it comes to sensors. It may be as simple as a sensor that's at a desk, right? So someone sits there, someone isn't sitting there, on and off. There may be sensors that they want to have for a conference room that evaluates the degree of occupancy of that conference room. It may use video image. I've seen sensors that use heart rates and heartbeats to determine the degree of occupancy. So it captures if someone's there or not and the time that they're there. It captures how many, say in a conference room, how many people are there from what time to what time. And it captures all this information, and then through analytics, you're able to filter that and say, oh, you know, Monday through Friday, I left out a very important step. It then anonymizes the data. So we don't capture who, just that the space is being utilized or isn't being utilized, and the degree of occupancy of the space. So once it's been purged of who the personal information is, we then are able to use that in analytics and say, okay, from Monday through Friday, my utilization is this, and on Fridays it's lower from this group and higher from this group or whatever. So it really helps you understand the space utilization and when that space is being used and how it's being used.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to show today, Carrie. If you can.
There was one more question then.
Sure.
So how many SAP clients are utilizing the application now, both in on-prem and cloud?
So our classic real estate solution, you know, it's been around for a lot of years, and strangely enough, we don't really capture all the numbers and who has our solutions, but the number somewhere around 3,000 to 3,500 are using our on-premise solution. Cloud for Real Estate's newer. We released it last year, so under 100, I would say, are currently using the solution, but it's exciting, and I think it's something that is gaining traction for sure.
Very good. Well, I don't have any other questions. I just want to, let people know, again, reach out to bramasol.com if you'd like any more information on SAP Cloud for Real Estate, or again, treasury, revenue recognition, leasing, or S4, and we'd love to engage with you. So I want to thank Julio and Tom, and wish everybody a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Carrie.